Climate solutions is not necessarily a risk. It's more of a business opportunity for these firms. We have been trying to create this large, cool database that captures firms' engagement in climate solutions.
Climate solutions, formerly we defined it as products and services that companies are developing or deploying new technologies in this transition to a low-carbon economy.
We basically capture, around 4,500 public companies in the US across a huge time span from 2005 to 2022.
Are you saying that you have a database filled with SEC filings?
Well, the SEC filings is the primary source from which we extract the information to create that database.
Okay. From what I understand, these are 10K filings. Can you please explain what are 10K filings and why would they be so valuable for this research?
Every public company in the US has to file a 10K filing. So these are basically like reports that contains a whole bunch of information about the company.
So this is a document companies prepare year over year, and it's under the scrutiny of the SEC. So there's a liability, legal liability for misrepresenting information.
Now, what we're interested in is this one particular section of that 10K. It's a very long document, so we're not interested in the full thing. So we're looking at what's called the Item 1 Business Description section. And so this section basically captures the firm's products and services. So they basically have to describe what their main product and services are in that section. And then we basically train a model to extract that information.
Tell us a little bit about this large language model that you've been building for 2 years.
And so what we do there is we take all the text and then we give it to GPT and be like, every sentence here, is it a climate solution sentence? Is it not a climate solution sentence? And that's how we get at what are the firms doing, which firms are providing climate solutions. It can even tell us what is the climate solution. We have 88 topics. So it can tell us if it's sustainable aviation fuel, is it about solar, is it wind, is it plant-based diet?
So 88 solutions, is that new? Did you figure that out as a part of this research?
Our first list of climate solutions comes from Project Drawdown, which is basically a list of climate technologies that can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And it's compiled by a network of scientists and researchers. And what we have done is use that as the starting point to train our model to then pick up technologies that are on that list, but also similar to that list that may not be on the list initially, but has come out of our large language model.
I thought companies aren't required to release their climate engagement, if you will, their climate investments.
They have to describe their business. And when they describe the business, a firm that is transitioning, for example, from selling internal combustion engine to EV, they will say that as part of their product description, such that, let's say back in 2014, maybe they're saying we produce cars, trucks, etc. And then when you look at 2022's annual report, they say we are producing and scaling our EV. So that's what we're capturing, this treasure mine that we previously wasn't using.
What sort of things are you finding out about public companies in the United States?
The general trend is that, most firms these days are engaging somewhat in climate solutions.
Actually, if you look at the data, linking back to 2022, I would say half of the firms have some sentences about climate solutions. Half of the firms in the US public firms domain. So that's actually a lot.
Certainly not all of these companies are taking aggressive action when it comes to climate. Can you talk a little bit about who's lagging behind?
There is a large dispersion across industries. Some industries are really, they're the big drivers of climate solutions, for example, automobile and components, capital goods, utilities, whereas some industries like airline, marine transportation are, less engaged in climate solutions.
Interesting. Airlines are less engaged.
So in 2022 fiscal year, there are 19 airlines companies, and only 3 did not mention sustainable aviation fuel.
We do live in an era where companies are accused of greenwashing or maybe not talking about their climate actions or investments, which might be called green hushing. How does this play a role in addressing those types of things?
Yeah, I think, climate solutions is something that's quite visible. So, if they have a clear product and service that does indeed help reduce carbon emissions, it's going to be used by consumers, all around. And so I think the message there is quite clear, right? So we look at products and services. So these are observable, tangible things that consumers use, so I think it's going to actually help them to show that it's not just all talk, but they're actually making investments in terms of climate solutions.
Demand for these products and services in the future means that there's opportunities that you might want to start considering investing today. And yes, even though the profitability initially may be lower, but as you scale, your economy of scale grows up, we're seeing the profitability margin improve over time. And again, by 2030, when a lot of firms are looking for these solutions, if you have the climate solutions already, then you get a head start in gaining that market share.
So let's name some names. When you're looking at this list of companies that have climate solutions and you're ranking them by their climate solution score, what sorts of companies top the list? Is it, say, a Tesla and other consumer brand name companies that we'll all know, or are they different?
Yeah, I mean, Tesla is a perfect example. I think they're ranked number 2 on the list if you look across all industries. And that's expected. They're the main proponents of EVs. And so they're a perfect example of what we call a pure climate solutions firm. But there are other firms as well. For example, FedEx may not necessarily produce EVs, but they use EVs in their delivery fleet. And so they would also be considered a climate solutions company. We have other companies like GM, who have traditionally not engaged in climate solutions, but over time we have seen more and more production of EVs as well. We have also companies like AES, who have been talking about the production of renewable energy storage. So there are companies that are transitioning, but there are also companies like Tesla who are pure climate solution companies.
Do you think it will surprise some of these CEOs when they see that they're, in the top 10 of firms ranked by climate solution score?
Most companies have a good sense of, at least in terms of what they're doing in their own businesses, maybe not across industries, but at least within the industry. I think they should have a good idea of where they stand, especially if they have made huge improvements.
We can group the climate solutions firms into the 2 main categories, right? The pure firms that's always doing climate solutions, the Tesla, the Beyond Meat, and then you have the transition firms. But there's also the non-transition firms. And so in one of the study, we actually used the non-transition firm as a benchmark. And we look at the firms that's similar in firm size and firm age and find that the ones that are transitioning, they have a higher revenue growth, but also a little lower profitability, but it's not very significant, potentially because these are large firms that have economies of scale already. Compared to other firms that is not doing climate solutions of similar size and age, the pure firms, we do see higher SG&A, the cost for salary, right? The cost of goods sold, as well as R&D. So actually, there's one argument, which is by focusing on climate solutions, which is also hopefully good for the business because of the fact in the future there'll be demand for these products. And you could actually let the profit maximizing mindset drive whether or not which climate solutions you should involve with. What are some of the most cost-efficient ways to scale the climate solutions? So I actually think there's a lot of synergy with companies leveraging their skill sets with how to do things very efficiently and at the same time applying to climate solutions. And together is where they make the largest impact for the society.
Based on your analysis so far, would you say that we're at a tipping point for companies engaging in climate solutions?
I think climate solutions, it's been trending upwards over time. And I would say, in recent years, with RIA and all of this kind of support for the transition, it's at a point where many firms see a huge benefit in terms of engaging climate solutions, but there are also risks involved as well. So, the payoff is, far into the future. So, in order to engage in climate solutions, one has to, make the necessary investments. And so in the short term, profitability may suffer, but in the long term, it could eventually pay off. But that's, maybe 5-10 years into the future. And so one has to really hold out.
In the past, companies might feel very uncertain. How much demand is there for climate solutions? Should I be investing in this technology? Because it is costly. And so what this data seems to be showing is over time, firms are more and more getting into this area, and hopefully it reduces the uncertainty. It speaks to the fact that there is likely demand for climate solutions down the road. Potentially it's coming from regulations and IRA subsidies, but even a lot of companies are setting targets these days. And a lot of the deadlines are 2030, 2050. And by the time companies need to meet the targets, they will be looking for solutions. And here, if you have that solution, you can get that market share.
The IRA is giving out huge grants to local governments and also directly to firms to help them transition. So we can use this large language model that we've built to look at the impact of the IRA. And so we can compare firms' climate solutions before the announcement or the establishment of the IRA versus afterwards, and see which firms experienced the biggest jump in the climate solution score. And these would be the companies that really benefited from the IRA.
So it sounds like mayors and governors and economic development organizations in the states will love to get into this database.
So because the database, right, we have companies and over years what kind of climate solutions they're involved with. And you can also see their profitability, their revenue growth. And so that would potentially point to, hey, this is an opportunity area that we haven't considered, but the other firms are jumping onto it. So we also want to be ready by the time 2030 comes, when the companies are looking for the solution. We want to be one of the companies able to provide that.
Do you think because the database is coming out of Harvard Business School that more people might pay attention to it?
Yeah, for sure. The resources that we have here allow us to create this database that would not be possible elsewhere. We have spent a huge amount of time, training the model, getting the necessary data to train the model as well. So for sure, I think it's going to gain a lot of traction, and so we're going to continuously update it.
Is that going to be something that will be publicly accessible?
Yes, so that's our ultimate goal, is to make this database publicly available, and we can update it every year once new 10K filings are released. So we hope to see this as a continuously updated database which everyone can access.
This database is going to be incredibly useful to you, your colleagues at Harvard Business School, to us at Biggs, but I would imagine a lot of people are going to be able to extract insights out of it. Who would you think might find it useful?
First of all, other researchers, because we only studied a few questions, but we really think there's so much potential from all sectors to from different disciplines, even within the business school. Perhaps you're coming from a marketing standpoint, from a strategy standpoint, the human capital implications. And with our data, hopefully other scholars can help answer what are some of the enabling factors and maybe frictions that ultimately, if we learn, can help us scale climate solutions.
One could use this database to look at what are some of the emerging technologies to, see, where can we direct our next investment? It also has policy implications. So, are particular industries engaged with another industry in terms of kind of industry overlap? Maybe one technology really complements another technology. And so it could help policymakers see which two industries may need certain types of coordination to help them be linked together.
So are all of these technologies great? Are they magic bullets for the planet?
Time will tell, right? So, as we see more and more technologies being developed, we can try to test out, what are their potentials, how costly they are. There are some data points on this, but I think, more work can be done in terms of, using this database to examine those research questions.
That's great. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.